Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the South Coast Rail update for the city of New Bedford on our construction ongoing. We're just starting, so we will wait a couple minutes to welcome everyone who might just be joining. So please be patient and we'll be back with you in just a couple moments. Good evening. We're waiting just a couple moments to let people sign on to our briefing on the New Bedford construction for South Coast Rail. We'll start in another minute. All right, good evening. We're going to start our presentation. We are going to talk about the ongoing construction in New Bedford in this public meeting. And I want to remind you of how a Zoom meeting works. My name is Nancy Farrell. I'm going to moderate the meeting this evening. The meeting is being recorded, and the reason we do that is so that we can put it on the website, so those who might not be available to see it this evening will have access to it. Or if you want to go back and look at it, it will be available to you. So that is why it's recording. We do mute all attendees during the presentation to prevent excessive background noise. And I'm sure you know that we will be inviting you to raise your hand or to participate in the Q&A or to call in at the end of the session. We have closed captioning available at tonight's meeting. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you can see CC live transcript, and you can click that if you'd like to see closed captioning, which will run along the bottom of the screen. We also have interpreters who are translating the meeting into Spanish into Portuguese. And I'd like to welcome them to welcome you right now. First, we're going to hear from Soledad, who will be doing the Portuguese translations. Soledad?
Boa noite para todos. Quem precisar dos serviços da intérprete de português, tem botão embaixo que diz interpretação. Vocês têm que carregar nesse botão para ouvir a língua que o senhor prefere, em português ou em espanhol. E enquanto quiser fazer alguma pergunta, é só levantar a mão e fazemos as traduções para vocês.
Thank you very much. And Emily in Spanish.
Buenas noches y bienvenidos a todo el mundo. Tenemos interpretación en portugués y en español para esta presentación. En un momentico vamos a encender la función de interpretación y cuando lo hacemos simplemente ubícanse al fondo de su pantalla y ahí haz clic en el globito y de ahí escoge Spanish. Si se está conectando con móvil, empuje los 3 puntitos, escoge más, pues Interpretation, pues Spanish, pues Done. Si tiene cualquier problema, por favor comunícase con nosotros tras el chat y disfruta la presentación.
Thank you very much, Emily and Soledad. Now, if Spanish and 2 other languages, obviously, the 2 languages are available, but you will also need to click to hear English. So at the bottom of your screen, there is a globe and it says interpretation. And if you wish to hear it in English, please check that now, or Portuguese or Spanish. Okay, so look for the globe, interpretation, and then check the language that you want to hear the presentation in. I'll wait a second for everyone to do that. All right, great. So at the end of the presentation, we do ask you to try to limit your question to one at a time or one topic at a time. You can use the Q&A button again, which is at the bottom of the screen. You can use the raise hand button and then wait for us to recognize you. And again, what I often do is if I have a series of questions, which are all about the same topics, we'll ask a general question and ask the team to give us an answer. If you ask us a question and we don't have the answer tonight, we will get back to you. We will let you know what the answer is. And we invite you to send us emails at the end of the show. Here you will see how to send us an email or to look at the website or to sign up for future information about the project. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Randy Hunt. He is the Senior Director of Administration for the South Coast Rail Project, and he's going to kick us off this evening. Randy, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Nancy. Good evening to everybody. And I want to welcome everyone here, including all of our dignitaries and their office staffs who might be on this call, whether it be our federal, state, or the city offices. So welcome to everybody. The commuter rail to Boston from New Bedford last operated in 1958. And I have to admit, I preceded that date, but I was probably wearing diapers at the time. And since then, freight rail came back to some extent in the 1990s, and it sparked a lot of conversations about reintroducing commuter rail to New Bedford and Fall River and to Taunton as well. So in 2009, there was a South Coast Corridor Plan that was published, which talked about various economic benefits and environmental protection issues that were involved with creating such a commuter rail. And in 2013, an environmental impact statement was approved for a route heading down to the South Coast via Stoughton. But the cost of creating the commuter rail at that time was more than the state could handle. Fortunately, in 2018, an environmental impact study was done and completed that allowed us to break this into two parts. Phase one uses the rail corridor that goes down to Middleborough, and we'll show you in a minute these maps, and then extends it from Middleborough down to Taunton, Fall River, and New Bedford. That is what we broke ground on in 2019. And we will talk about everything that has happened to date, as well as what we expect to happen over the next 22 months, and getting everything ready for people to buy tickets and ride up to Boston for the first time since 1958. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Jean Fox, who is South Coast Rail's Director of Community Engagement. She has been a key player in this project for over a decade and helped move it to the point where we actually have the light at the end of the proverbial railroad tunnel. And so I'm very happy and pleased to present Jean Fox to you, who will walk us through the presentation.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see that so many people are attending this meeting. It was our goal to update everyone in New Bedford. As you know, this is an exciting time for us. And I believe it will be a very exciting time for the city of New Bedford as well. Next slide, please. So good to know that we're on time, we are on budget, and we are fully funded, state funding. The Middleborough, New Bedford, and Signals contract, the larger contract, the $405.3 million contract, is at roughly 20% completion. And South Coast Rail anticipates reaching the midpoint of construction in the spring of this year, with revenue service anticipated for late 2023. Next slide, please. So here are the maps Randy was referring to, and I think many of you have seen these before. We talked about briefly, Randy addressed the Stoughton line. What we're doing is extending the existing Middleborough service south to Taunton, Fall River, and New Bedford. And if you look at that horizontal short train track line, that is the Middleborough secondary. We're building that, we're using that line to access what we call the Southern Triangle, which is common to both phase 1 and the full build. We're going to have 6 new stations and 2 layover facilities. So for you folks in New Bedford, the layover is going to be at Wamsutta, which is right next to the New Bedford Station at the Wales Tooth Sea Streak area. And then we'll also have on the northern part of the city, the Church Street Station. In addition to that, we'll have Middleborough Station. And then on the Fall River line, you can see we have the Fall River Depot, the Weaver's Cove layover, and the Freetown Station, which is actually in a sonnet. And then the East Taunton Station, which is right at 140 and 24, where that massive interchange project is currently underway. And then once you get in New Bedford, you'll go up over to Middleborough and then straight up and have the existing line that gets you into South Station in Boston. Next slide, please. So we did an awful lot in the past year. COVID didn't stop us at all. By the fourth quarter of 2021, the New Bedford and Fall River contracts had completed about $155 million worth of work. We completed a number of early action procurements for special track and other track materials. We replaced 44 culverts, 4 bridges, and we tackled the cleaning and drainage improvements along the Middleborough secondary line, the New Bedford main line, and the Fall River secondary line. We did right-of-way tree canopy clearing per state and federal regulation, and track work is complete already from Myrick's Junction down to Adams Lane in Berkeley. Next slide, please. So on the New Bedford main line in the Middleborough secondary, the tree canopy has been cleared and significant track has been laid from Pilgrim Junction to Cotley Junction. All of the grade crossings along the Middleborough secondary are well underway, and work continues along the right-of-way from north to south. So 4 of 11 culverts have been completed, 5 of 18 grade crossings, and 5 of 24.1 track miles have been laid. Now, to minimize the use of the reuse, to maximize the reuse of on-site materials, soils, South Coast Rail has a very, a really extensive soil management program, which sends significant quantities of soils to Fall River, Weaver's Cove, at the layover, and to the Freetown Station. At this point, we have 25,000 cubic yards that have been delivered to Freetown Station and about 7,000 cubic yards that have gone on to Weaver's Cove in Fall River, all tested and all suitable soils for those facilities. Next slide, thank you. The 10-week look ahead for Middleborough Secondary, Middleborough to Taunton, New Bedford Main Line, which includes Taunton, Lakeville, Berkeley, Freetown, and New Bedford. To stations in Middleborough, we're installing wing walls. Oh wait, I think, yes, wing walls, station ramps, walls, fine grade the station parking lot. At the East Taunton Station, drainage, utilities, fine grading the station parking lot, excavating for platform footings, and an elevator pit. I will point out that the East Taunton Station is the only center island, the only center island platform station on this phase 1. And so it's a little bit more involved in the construction, but it's moving along very, very nicely. The Church Street Station, we're gonna fine grade the station parking lot. Waterproofing for the platform footings is happening. And at New Bedford Station, micropiles are going in for the station platform. The track work, we are going to be doing an awful lot of track work this year. We're excavating to install ballast and ballast mats. Those ballast mats help with noise and vibration. And we're installing turnouts at Cotley. Full depth track reconstruction will be going on Middleborough Avenue in Taunton and south of Malbone in Lakeville. Then pile walls along the New Bedford main line will be going in. And then already you're probably seeing some work at the Wamsutta layover, drainage structures, electrical duct banks, and we're going to be excavating for the crew building, which will be on site. So remember, the layover facilities consist of 6 sets of tracks and a crew building. They're secure facilities. They're where the trains go to bed at night, and no maintenance occurs in these facilities. So it's just cleaning and sleeping. Next slide, please. So we are installing fencing at a number of locations along the Middleborough secondary line and the Fall River secondary line, moving to other locations in the near future. Right now, we really are pretty much up in Middleborough. We'll be extending down into the New Bedford area. Fencing is typically placed in areas where it enhances safety and it minimizes trespassing on the railroad right-of-way, which is extremely important, particularly in an area where we haven't seen any kind of fast-moving train in decades. Trespassing is something we're paying very close attention to, and safety is, of course, a top priority. Typical MBTA fencing is 6 foot tall chain link fence, and it is always set along the MBTA's property line. And sometimes when we install the fencing, we have to do a little bit of tree and brush clearing just to facilitate that. Next slide, please. So station elements. This is not Union Station, Grand Central Station. It's not even South Station, but it's a very nice commuter rail station, which consists typically of an 800-foot platform, which you'll see at both New Bedford and Church Street. These are high level. You can get on from any car. They all have a canopy. At the Church Street station, we have accessible parking, EV parking, bike parking, 355 spots. There's going to be a bus stop and drop-off area. There's going to also be at Church Street a nice landscaped area facing Church Street. And then the sidewalk on Church Street from Park to Irvington, just on the west side, is going to be redone. New signal systems going in, and you'll see some intersection improvements at Church and Nash. The New Bedford station has the same platform, 800-foot high level. There's a pedestrian bridge that will be placed from Purchase Street over to the station area. There's bike parking accessible and electric vehicle parking. There's also 352 spaces allocated there. A Acushnet Ave parking lot entrance will provide access to the station area for vehicles and pedestrians. And then the sidewalk from Acushnet Avenue provides pedestrian access to the station. And we will be sharing parking with the seasonal C Street parking, which is a portion, there's 700 and plus spaces there at the Whale's Tooth parking lot. Next slide, please. So here's a rendering on the left of the Church Street station, what it will look like when it's complete. There's your, the platform would be in the back there, and the canopy over top, signage, the parking. You'll see the bus turnout right there for easy drop off in boarding for people who are taking the bus. And then you can see what it looks like pretty much. Well, it looks a little better now because that's a couple of months old, but there's an awful lot of activity over there at the Church Street station. Next slide, please. Also, Church Street, additional photos of the work in the area. Seems like we're going to be seeing that platform come along soon, but there's an awful lot of preliminary work that goes on. So there's all kinds of drainage, utilities, a lot of activity before you can really see it emerge as a station, but it's definitely come a long way. Next slide, please. So here are some pictures of erosion controls, right-of-way work. It's the erosion control you can see on the left side, and then you can see a little bit on the right. You see the vehicle on the right on the tracks. There's a high rail vehicle. These are vehicles that can operate on the road or on the tracks. You'll frequently see, if you have clear areas to view the right-of-way, you'll see equipment out there like this and like other things. We also occasionally you'll see a crane. So none of this should be alarming. This is a classic huge construction project with a lot of equipment that it will be visible in many areas. Next slide, please. So the Wamsutter layover facility I mentioned, we have the 6 tracks. We have the crew quarters. There's a graphic of the crew quarter building below. Employee parking for them. It's gated, secure. This is a classic, as I said earlier, classic layover facility, not a maintenance facility, merely a place for the trains to stay at night and leave in the morning. These layover facilities are always located near the end of the line. And in the case of New Bedford, Wemsutta is right next to the end of the line, the southernmost station. Next slide, please. So coordinating with the City of New Bedford has been ongoing, and it has been exceedingly helpful to work with people in the city departments. We work with them to talk about design and construction topics. We've been working with them on the pedestrian bridge that will cross Route 18 in Acushnet. Our team also responds to public comments that we receive via email and in briefings. Most frequently asked questions currently relate to fencing. People want to know how high it is, where it's going, what it's for. And then we also have we're aware of street parking issues near Church Street. So I believe that when you have questions on the residential parking, that is something that would be brought up with your city council. It's been done in other areas. It's certainly doable, but we believe, according to all our ridership numbers, we have provided more than adequate parking spaces at the 2 New Bedford stations. Next slide, please. What to know about construction, I'm going to pass along to my colleague, Bob Campbell, who is very well versed in all things construction. Bob?
Thank you, Jean. So what to know about construction? In these meetings, we usually give the hours of operation. The construction hours is Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Of course, this time of year when we have those interminably long nights till we start getting our daylight back, the crews don't usually work and beyond dark. So they're basically from 7 to 5 nowadays. But when as the days get longer, they will be extending their days to 7 p.m. And I want to point out, though, that that's when the construction starts. The personnel who work on the job have to arrive at the site before the job starts, and they often arrive in company vehicles, often with backup alarms, so you might hear them. So our construction activity starts at 7 a.m. So you will still see people on site before that. The exception to that is track outages. We don't have a 7 to 7 day for those. We have, in order to minimize the inconvenience to residents nearby, to motorists who are using the streets, and to the freight traffic that's using the rails. We have times when we have the roads completely out or the tracks completely out. And during those times, we can't allow any traffic through. So we try to get those done as quickly as possible. So in those instances, we run work 24 hours a day, and it typically will last about a 5-day duration. Sometimes they're a little bit less, sometimes they're a little bit more, but generally it's a 5-day, 24-hour-a-day period. Pest and dust control are a required part of this project. They're always ongoing. We have a very robust dust monitoring program. They are a big part of what we're doing on this construction job. Also, the contractors and site personnel are complying with the COVID-19 health and safety regulations. FRA is very strict, and we're under their regulations, any work that we're doing on the tracks. And we're, you know, those requirements change situationally, but we are complying with all those requirements. Next slide, please, Joe. So next slide is safety. And always expect a train at a rail crossing. As a local resident or worker, you may think that you know the schedule of the trains, but the point here is you don't. The schedules change, trains may be added, other equipment may be using the tracks, as Jean said, what we call a high rail equipment. I know I was sitting at a crossing one time, and it was a little bit disconcerting to be sitting there outside the crossing and to see a 10-wheel dump truck cruising along the rail lines backwards. It's not uncommon at all to see that. So just just slow down, look both ways, and listen. Also, never stop on the tracks. A lot of thought and resources goes into making grade crossings as safe as we can possibly make them. So please don't make all that a waste and possibly get injured by crossing somewhere else. Cross only at the designated crossings. And remember that trespassing along the tracks is illegal. I know that there's been infrequent freight train activity on those tracks for years now. It's recently transformed into a huge construction site, very busy construction site. It's only going to get busier, especially this season. It's going to be very busy out there. And then after that, it's going to transition to a high-speed commuter rail corridor. And those are three places that you don't want anybody who's not trained. We'll have workers out there. Those workers get very well trained. You see, they get Keola's training, who runs the commuter rail. They get Mass Coastal training from the freight train operator, and they are very well trained. They know what they're doing out there. We don't want anybody out there who doesn't belong there. It's a very dangerous place to be. You also see at the bottom of that slide is a little Operation Lifesaver. You're going to be hearing a lot more about that going forward as the commuter rail draws closer to fruition. Till then, thank you. Be safe. Stay tuned. And I'm going to turn the slides back over to Jean.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much. Want to remind everyone of our community outreach activities. I also want to thank people who have signed up to get our weekly e-blasts. We have, as you can see on the screen, a website and email addresses. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. We pride ourselves on making ourselves available to meet with residents, businesses, elected officials, anyone interested in an update, anyone with questions or issues they wish to discuss with us. We also have a hotline. This hotline is answered Monday through Friday, typically when the crews are there between 7 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. Contractor staff receives those calls. Any calls received outside those hours will typically be answered on the next business day. And if it's something the contractor can't immediately respond to, it's referred directly to us on the outreach team. That number is 617-222-4099. And feel free to call it anytime or email us. Our weekly updates, I'm proud to say we have over 4,500 subscribers. We pride ourselves on making sure that the information that goes out in these weekly updates is accurate and timely. It shows everyone where, what, and how activities are taking place in this project. And if there is work that will affect abutters, we provide flyers to anyone who's impacted. You'll see in that graphic, there's a detour. We would notify anyone impacted by that detour. That will be happening as we get into work where we have detour traffic management that has to change, and any impact directly to you that would affect your commute. And anytime anybody has a question, we certainly encourage you to ask. Thank you, John Bullard. I saw your chat. Thank you for all your leadership in the task force days. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it right back over to Nancy.
Thanks very much, everyone. Now it's going to be your turn. Let me remind you that if you're calling in via phone, you can hit *9, and I'll call out the last 4 digits of your phone number and unmute your audio when it is your turn. You can also use the Q&A button. I see we have a couple questions there. And then the raise hand button so that we can recognize you and unmute your microphone. After you share your comment or question, we'll lower your hand and you'll be muted to allow us to respond and provide opportunities for other people to participate. And before we get started with the general conversation, I wanted to see if there are any elected officials who might want to say something. I saw Councillor Jesta on there and who helped us put this meeting together. Councillor, if you raise your hand and you'd like to say anything, we'd be happy to recognize you. Yes, yes, okay. Councillor Jesta. And
hi.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, I needed to unmute myself. So, thank you everyone for being on today. I really appreciate the professionalism of everybody. And I just want to say thank you. And if I have any questions, I will definitely reach out. And I will also let my constituents in my ward, which houses the Church Street station, about the website that you guys have, that they can watch this video. And if they have any questions, please reach out to you. So again, thank you very much for everything. And I'm always here to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. It'll take us usually a couple days to get the recording and get it posted on the website, but we can announce when that and the PowerPoint are both posted. I know lots of people like to go back and take a look at things. Are there any other elected officials whom I'm missing? Because there's a nice list I'm scrolling down. No, I see former Mayor Bullard and former Mayor Lang. If either one of you would like to say something at the moment, or just enjoying the fact that phase 1 is coming. You can raise your hand. No? Okay, well, we can come back to you if you're interested. If I missed anybody else, please just put your hand up. And what I'm gonna do is alternate between the Q&A and the hand raise. So there are a couple of questions in the Q&A. And the first one from Liz Isherwood is, would it be possible to have a train stop at the New Bedford Business Park? I don't think it could happen in this particular time frame, but Jean, is that something you could address over the long term?
Right. Hi, Liz. I'm glad you're here. I think that's a great idea. It's just not in phase 1. But that doesn't mean you don't continue to advocate for what works for your town and city. I know in other areas, these questions have come up because they're seeing some development happen, and then it might make more sense. But we're permitted and funded for what we're building right now, and we're really happy that we've gotten this far.
Thanks, Jean. And thanks, Liz. I appreciate what you're doing. Mark Snyder has an interesting question. And he's pointing out the potential ridership success that could come with appealing to island travelers continuing on to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, and suggesting there's a huge market potential for the new rail service, especially at off-peak commuter times. The existing tracks presently continue beyond the Whale's Tooth parking lot, the planned terminus point of the rail service, direct to State Pier, where the ferries depart for the islands. So he wonders why anyone hasn't thought through the importance of extending the actual train service on this short but critical connector. Historically, this connector was used for this purpose, connecting the island ferries with the rail service to Boston. Can you please comment on the plans to continue the passenger rail directly to the pierhead without a shuttle van to make the connection? Well, at the moment, we're not able to make that plan. And there are a number of reasons. The project actually evaluated the extension of services to this area in the environmental process. It was discounted for a number of reasons, including a very tight environment, which has probably changed since it was used originally, and the substantial infrastructure that would be required for new tracks, signals, and station platform that would comply with all the commuter rail standards. We just can't throw something up there. So if it's reconsidered, a notice of project change and an environmental impact statement or report would likely be required. I think maybe once the train is there and everyone's riding it, there will be more pressure to do this kind of thing. But at the moment, it's not very likely, but it's not necessarily ruled out unless someone who was in on that study tells me that it's totally impossible. Anyone willing to do that right now? Nope, doesn't look like it, but it would take quite a bit of work and a complete environmental review. But thank you. And Liz reminds us that the ferry has a shuttle runs in relation to the ferry schedule. So that's always good news. going to go to hands up and recognize Miles Grant. And let's see. You unmute yourself, Miles, I think, yeah.
Yes, did that work?
Yes, you're welcome.
Great, thank you very much. I'm somebody who lives in Acushnet right now, and I would love to live closer to these stations. However, I see that there's hundreds of parking spots planned for these stations, but I don't know how much new dense housing is planned. And right now there's not much housing at all around Church Street. I just wonder, are we going to be able to meet our climate goals and our equity goals with so much parking and virtually no new housing?
The MBTA does have a TOD program, and and I know that the city of New Bedford is looking at these issues. We've worked with them on this, and I believe that there's some work continuing. Jean, maybe you could correct me or add some more on that topic.
No, you're absolutely right. The city, with the city planning and with SERPED, did extensive analysis around both station sites in the city of New Bedford, and it's about to take off again. So it is a mixed use. There's a looking at residential, commercial, different uses that will make the best use of the area within a quarter to a half mile around the station. Very exciting work that they've done, and you could actually see some of the preliminary work if you contact SERPED or city planning. So that would be Jen Carloni. Really great work, more to come. But that's why the transit-oriented development work is so important, to make optimal use of the station for the riders and the people who want to live there. So I think your question is spot on and timely, and I do believe the city is doing a wonderful job addressing that. So there will be additional housing options for people. I too would love to be able to never have to get in my car again.
Thank you, Jean. Councilor Pereira, I think I missed you. If you'd like to join us live, you can raise your hand and we can recognize you. I apologize. Oh, she put a message in the chat. So thank you, Councilor Pereira, for joining us. I amazingly do not have any other questions. So I'm sure I will get some more. You're welcome to put them in the Q&A or raise your hand. All right. Peter, I think it's Muse, or I hope I said it correctly. Let's see, are you?
You should be able to unmute yourself.
Mute yourself, Peter. Yeah. Peter, you look like you're able to.
There we go.
Oh yeah, great, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Towards that last question on housing, there is a regulation. I don't know if you're familiar with it, and I don't know enough, but it's called the MBTA communities for multi-family housing, and it got passed about a year and a half ago under the housing choice, where any community that has a station has a certain requirement to increase their affordable multifamily housing. Are you involved in any of that with the planning department of New Bedford?
At this point in time, we're waiting for the SERPED process to restart, and the MBTA has been involved in that process, not necessarily directly building anything at this point, but certainly willing to work with the city to see how those things could happen in the future.
Oh, I don't think the MBTA gets involved in the building. Right. It's a matter of the city allocating. The previous speaker from Acushnet was saying there is a requirement to have certain multifamily housing around the MBTA station, which the city needs to do with developers, not the MBTA. So that's something to watch for as the stations come online.
Absolutely, we understand, just that we do participate in certain elements of that planning, because part of the, I mean, just to be friendly and not to be in the way of the city implementing it. So I think that's a fair statement. Okay, thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just going back to the Q&A. Yes, okay. There are some questions in the chat. let's see. Will consideration be given to expanding the parking lot at New Bedford Station, which is close to capacity now during the ferry season? We have done a fair amount of work to anticipate the number of riders who will be using the parking lot. And I think it's fair to say we're also working closely with the city to keep an eye on that. And so if anything needs to be adjusted going forward, we're certainly going to be having those conversations. We're really happy that the ferry is popular. But I think we're certainly willing at the opening of the station at that exciting time to have those conversations. There is, let's see, what's the difference in the amount of time it would take to ride from New Bedford to Boston in the phase 1 versus the phase 2 build out? So you're referring to the full build, which at the moment is the line that would come down through Stoughton. And I don't remember that answer. I used to know it. Jean?
Yeah, well, it was an electric line through Stoughton and it was 75 minutes. And we're offering a 90-minute one-seat ride from New Bedford into South Station.
So we'll all hope that someday the train will be electric and that we'll move faster. Let's see, will the parking allow for someone to leave a car overnight? For example, in Middleborough, that is not an option. I think that will remain the case at New Bedford and Church Street as well. No final determinations, but that seems to be MBTA policy.
At Church Street, I think you're right, but the city's going to be operating the Wamsutta, the Whales Tooth parking lot, and they do allow overnight parking for the ferry, so there'll be a mixture there.
All right, that's good news for Heidi, who asked the question. All right. This question is, what fare zone will Church Street be? That's a question we unfortunately can't answer yet. I mean, that's an issue that the MBTA is looking at. And while we're building the railroad, we don't get to decide how much it costs to ride it. And as soon as that information is available, it will be part of what we share with everyone. Sorry that I can't answer that question. Let's see. All right. I see Linda Roy from the Standard Times. I guess you would like to ask a question, Ms. Roy. We will unmute you. And you can unmute yourself.
No, I didn't have a question. I might have clicked something accidentally.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well, glad to have you here. Anyone else have a question or a comment?
Nancy, I wanted to add one thing on the parking at
course.
Whales Tooth, that we also looked at the fact that our trains are commuter trains, and the C Streak is seasonal, and mostly on the weekends, and we are very well aware that a couple of those weekends are tight, and that's also part of the dialogue we're having with the city and the Port Authority.
Thanks, Jean. Do we have, I don't have any other hands raised or questions in the Q&A. Oh, Scott Lang. And we will unmute you, and you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I know there's millions and millions of details that have gone into this. And the city is extremely appreciative of everyone's diligence, hard work. This is going to be a major economic, and environmental, and social justice type of a project for our city for generations. So we really appreciate it. This was an easy one to say it can't be done, and I think your team has shown that it not only can be done, but it'll be done well, and it'll improve as we go. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
It's our pleasure, and I can say that honestly. It's amazing to work on a project of this scope and importance. Here is another question. Are the possibilities of running limited stop service from New Bedford Fall River, or are these options restricted by capacity at South Station? going to have to turn to someone on the team to answer that question, or?
Nancy, I'll take that.
Okay, Rick Carey from VHB. The
Thanks,
design
Nancy.
team. Yeah.
And you answered your own question, actually. Yeah, the capacity is really limited from actually the Braintree area up into South Station. So we've put in as many trains as we can for the morning and peak hours, but there's limitations on those slots, and we've optimized those with the service that'll come down to New Bedford, but there's really not a lot of latitude for flexibility on different operational plans. So.
Thanks, Rick. Let's see, I'm looking to see if I missed any of the questions. There's a question from William Gerard. When do we expect a preliminary engineering and construction management RFP? And I don't know the answer to that question. Do you mean for the full build, sir? That's my guess. Bob, are you jumping on to this one?
I was going to say that for phase one, all of the engineering and construction management is already in place. For the full build, we're still dealing with the environmental aspects of it and trying to figure out what our best way to deliver that project would be. So if that's what he's talking about, we still don't have a schedule for that yet either.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Will there be greater improvements to New Bedford public transport for commuters to travel car-free to various New Bedford stations? Also, is there a plan for pedestrian crossings Route 6 to the train station? Now, I know on the first question, we have been coordinating with the local regional transit agency. I don't know that we have anything to announce tonight, but definitely there's been a conversation and coordination on that realm. A plan for pedestrian crossings, Route 6 to the train station. Now, that I'm not familiar with. Jean?
So I actually might have deferred to Rick on that. We are also, there's a conversation going on right now with the city and Mass DOT for some additional work on 18 and Acushnet. Rick?
Yeah, that's exactly right, okay. Jean. There's a whole planning process ongoing with the Route 18, turning it into a more boulevard type roadway system that would allow pedestrian crossings over Route 18. And that plan also expands out on the pedestrian and bike connections that from the surrounding areas. I don't know specifically over Route 6 for the question here, but I know that's the pedestrian and bike access is a really large focus of that Route 18 Boulevard study that Mass DOT and the city are doing.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rick. And hold on one second, going back to, is anything being done to address the congestion issues on the track between Braintree and Boston? I know that that is a big question. And Rick, having seen many diagrams about this, I'm not sure I can explain it, but perhaps you can.
I can say it's a complex area, and expanding capacity in that stretch between Braintree and Boston is extremely difficult because of the densely developed areas. I am not aware of anything in the works on addressing that issue, though it's always in many planning studies that the Office of Transportation Planning at Mass DOT looks at, as well as the MBTA. I just am not aware of anything in the work as a program project yet. It's but it is, I would consider it a mega project to do an expanded capacity of track infrastructure in that area. So,
thank you, Rick. Robert he's addressing the question of travel between Fall River and New Bedford Mista Point. Can it be done with a turnaround at Taunton? Well, that's an interesting question, but I don't know the answer. Maybe Rick, is that something you could look at for us?
Yeah, I don't have the answer. Yeah,
Okay.
physically, it can be done. You know,
Yeah.
the infrastructure will be in place, and it would have to be something that would be done that would not interfere with the operation, which is this project, which is commuter service from the South Coast region to Boston. So.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would add to that that the most likely solution in between is to catch the train up to Taunton and catch the train going down to Fall River, which depending on the schedule, time of day, frequency of trains, could be a real challenge. But once we have the schedules available, people could take a look at that and see.
Thanks, Randy. And then in response to the next question, we don't have the schedules available yet, and I know that's of great interest to people. So we will let you know when those schedules are available. Another question, will there be weekend service to New Bedford and Fall River? I don't think there's a final decision on that. And no, that's something, again, that you should keep an eye out for when we have the schedules available. Okay. I don't see anything new, but my colleagues sometimes find them before I do. No. Let me just remind you while I have a moment here that we will post this recording and the PowerPoint on the project website. And you can send us any questions you have that might arise at the address on the screen, South Coast Rail at dot.state.ma.us. We do our best to answer promptly. If it's more complicated, we might have to dig in a little bit, but we're always happy to hear from you. Why not engage in the community as you develop the schedule and not make people wait until it is published? The operations department of the MBTA is working on those kinds of issues. People there are pretty well aware of the fact that weekend service is attractive. And there are other issues besides what we would all like to see. In other words, the capacities, the number of coaches, the number of locomotives, the space at South Station. So those are the kinds of issues that MBTA Railroad Ops is working on. And I assure you that we will bring your considerations to the discussion. I don't know if anyone on the team wants to add anything to that, but I think it's a complex issue. It's not just sending a train down as much as possible. Let's see, we've got a few more questions, hold on. When can we expect work to begin on the New Bedford Station and Pedestrian Bridge? I think you could see from the map that the work is going from north to south, but there is some work starting on the New Bedford Station. And sometimes it doesn't look like much for a while because there's a lot of underground work that has to take place, utilities, stormwater protection, things like that. So let's see if we've got Kim or someone who'd like to address that a little better than I can. And the pedestrian bridge is still in final stages of design. But Kim, can you talk about preparing the station site a bit? And she's
if I'm sorry, good evening, everybody. Kim Dobaz. Yeah, if the question was when work actually at the layover and station sites is getting underway, and you will be seeing activity there throughout the season. So we are finally underway there.
Great. And I don't have any open questions in the Q&A. Lisa Sherman kindly says, excellent presentation and questions and answers. It's good to have an audience with good questions.
Good to see Lisa.
All right. Well, as Jean has said, we're really very interested in all your questions. I'm happy to answer them to the extent possible. We really appreciate the support the team has gotten and the project has gotten. And we do know that construction can be annoying and difficult, and we do our best to make sure that we are following our own standards and definitely making life as bearable as possible. Let's see in chat. Another question. Hold on, I'm looking for another question here. Okay. And I'm not seeing it, but that's, hold on, give me a second. Okay. Well, one question is, I may have missed this being said at the beginning. Is there a projected completion date for this project? Service anticipated at the end of 2023, which is a long time ago from 1958, but we're really happy that it's on the horizon. And did I miss a question?
I think you answered the pedestrian bridge question.
Okay, great. Okay. And let's see, we have a raised hand, Leonel Rebello. And you can unmute yourself in a second. I can't tell. Shana? Nope, the hand is down. Must have been, okay. Okay. Well, if there are no more questions, we will thank you for being with us this evening. We will look forward to seeing you on the train in a year and a half or so, maybe a little more. We will answer your questions to the extent we can. Please feel free to write us at this address. Look for the recording and the PowerPoint to be posted in a couple of days. And I'll check one more time. No? I hope you enjoy your evening. Thank you again for joining us this evening. And we'll be talking to you again, I'm sure. Have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.